Welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers. Diana, it's great to see you. Introduce our guest today and what we're doing.
Okay, we have with us today, we're really excited. We have Shonda Whitworth with us today, and Shonda has a lot of experience in publishing from the backside to being a published author. And now Shonda is launching into the coaching business. So we're going to be interviewing her and sharing with you all her gifts, her many gifts. So let's get started. Shonda, welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers.
Well, thank you so much, Diana, for the introduction, and Eddie, who's sitting in the background. So thank you very much.
Well, it's good to have you here. And Shonda, I was very intrigued with your published book, Appeal to the Courtroom of Heaven. Now, how long has that book been out?
So that released in February of 2020. I won't forget that because I was ready with the launch. I was ready to go. I had all my speaking engagements lined up in 2020, and then March 2020 happened and everything just fell flat. And all the plans I had in place to get that off the ground. And so, yes, Appeal to the Courtroom of Heaven released February of 2020. So I'm coming up on this will be coming up on the third year. So yeah,
that's exciting. And because of going through that, and then your work with Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas, you do know quite a bit about the publishing industry. And so I know you have a lot to offer. And so share with us how you've transitioned from your ministry, Kingdom Living Institute, and share your mission. And I love your tagline about the grace of God that saved us, teaches us how to live. So share with us about this new call, this new thing God put on your heart, and how it fits in with your previous ministry.
Well, that's a lot. That's a mouthful. That would take the whole. That would take the whole time. But I am just so grateful to be here and to share this with you. So the grace of God that saved us, teaches us how to live, is based on a scripture in Titus, and I'm so grateful for that because God's grace saved us. Well, God's grace teaches us how to get along in each day, and I really started experiencing God's grace in 2011 when my oldest son took a left instead of a right, and he crash landed in prison, and that devastated my world, and I fell apart. I was on the path of pursuing writing and speaking. I had been attending writers' conferences. I was attending speakers' conferences. Many of them were combined writer-speakers type conferences, and one of the main ones that I was a part of was class seminars, and they're no longer in business, but class seminars. And that's where I had met Eddie at Gross Ranch at class seminars. And I remember my world was rocked, and I was working for class seminars. I was on staff with them, and I met Eddie there, and he kept saying, "Shonda, you got to bleed. You got to bleed on the paper." Well, it was too raw for me to bleed on the paper. I had not experienced any healing. This was all brand new. And I just I'm like, I can't do that, Eddie. I can't do that. And I was so grateful for Diane Mills. I was her chauffeur basically at that conference, and I was so grateful for her. And she started pouring into me about fiction writing. I'm like, well, maybe I'll switch from nonfiction writer to fiction writing. And so I got all this info from Diane, attended all her classes. And when she left, she gave me her notebook. She goes, "Oh, I don't have room for this in my suitcase." Well, okay. but she gave me her notebook and said she would coach me on writing. At the time, she was with Jerry Jenkins, but she says, "I'll coach you on writing fiction." I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So I started writing fiction and training to write fiction, which to me was a lot harder than nonfiction. And then I sent a manuscript to an editor at Speak Up with Carol Kent. And I go there and get my manuscript evaluation for my fiction. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to be a fiction writer. I could turn my story into fiction and nobody have to know who I am. I could just be anonymous. I could write under a pen name. I could do all that stuff. And I get there and the fabulous editor, she says, Shonda, it looks like you don't like your protagonist. And I'm the protagonist.
I like that. I don't like my protagonist.
That's interesting for sure. Yeah.
I needed a lot more healing. So it was bringing out a lot of, so what I found was writing was very healing. And so it really brought out a lot of places where I needed writing. So then I'm out walking one day and I'm like, Lord, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do with this. I still need a lot of healing. I don't want to write though. I'm wrestling with God about writing. And he said, well, I felt like he dropped in my heart. Well, you help other writers get what they want, and I'll help you get what you want. And so I go home from that walk and I log on to Facebook and there's Eddie. I'm looking for help. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I said, well, if you're looking for help, I'll help you. Well, at first he said, well, I'm looking for somebody local. I don't know. I said, okay, well, that's fine. And I went on. Well, then a little short time later, he emailed me back, says, do you still want that job? I'm like, all right. So I start helping Eddie. And I think for the first year.
Yeah, for our listeners, that's with Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas. And so unpack that a little bit for the listener, what that meant. You're helping Eddie.
I did a little bit of everything that he could get me to do.
Okay.
And let me jump in and just say, and not for a lot of money. That was the other thing. This is really low pay scale.
Yeah, that was always the case.
Yeah.
And so, but at that point I was desperate because I had resigned from class seminars. I had resigned from my roles with class seminars, and I wasn't really doing anything at that point. And I needed to do something to get my mind out of the dungeon and the despair that it fell into. So I started working for Eddie, and it took a while to kind of find where my fit was. And then I found my fit in production. And so I practically oversaw production. So by the time the editor and the author finished the manuscript, all the way till Eddie was ready to upload it on the sales sites, I was the one in charge of all the stuff that happened in between, and doing the interior design, the cover design, and all those other elements that go in between. And then when I switched over to Lighthouse, that role continued because Eddie jokingly I say, because you just got to know Eddie to understand this. When he sold Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas to Iron Stream Media, he emailed me and said, don't you go anywhere. You were part of the package.
Yeah.
So Iron Stream kept me on till I resigned last year. And I learned a lot more skills in the publishing industry with them that, and went to another level in working in production with them. And so I'm really grateful to work with fabulous people through both Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas and through Iron Stream Media. I have had a lot of connections and a lot of growth. And that's my journey. And then I put in to write, Eddie kept emailing me, Shonda, you got to write the book. You got to write the book. And I'm like, I don't know how to write such a traumatic thing. And so I said, well, Lord, I know I could self-publish it. I have a ministry. My husband and I started a ministry called Fortress of Hope Ministries. That is a ministry. We incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and to reach the families that have been impacted by incarceration, to give them hope. And so we formed that ministry, and I'm like, well, I know I could publish this book. I know how to publish a book. But if you're really Lord, if you really want me to publish this, I just want to lay out a fleece and let me get a publisher. And so I started querying Cindy, and she rejected me. She was the editor of Straight Street Books, the imprint with Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas. And she rejected me a few times, but I'm grateful her pub board of editors, because I worked with them, gave me feedback. And I'm really grateful for the feedback that they said, well, we look for this, we look for that, And so I kept working the manuscript, so that's something that authors got to understand. Don't give up just because you're rejected. Keep working, find out how you can improve, and keep working it, because finally it got accepted and then published, and it was sold along, with Lighthouse Publishing and Iron Stream carried it on. And Iron Stream did even more with it than I even thought or imagined, even with Lighthouse would be able to do with it. So let
me jump in real quick and offer this as a thought for any of our listeners out there. So here's Shonda, who's basically the person running the back end publishing company, and the publishing board rejected her manuscript. She had all the clout. I mean, she's holding everybody's future in their hands, really, all the editors, the managing editors, and the authors. And she still got rejected. And the one thing I want everybody to understand is you might have influence, you may have contacts, but if the manuscript's not right, it doesn't matter. It is the words. It is the words.
Yes, and it is important to work with editors because, I was sharing with some of the people that I'm just starting to coach, like, really, you do not want your first manuscript published. You just don't. You don't want the second or third one published, probably. And I said, I don't know how many revisions that went through, but if I went back and looked at some of the original writings compared to what was published, it was still, we would see a big difference. I haven't gone and compared, but it would be a big difference. I know it would be, because I have worked with the editors, and it makes a big difference to work with the editor and the proofreaders. Yes, so, all of them. So it is a big difference. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, that's one thing Eddie and I are always telling our clients and listeners to this podcast is we are not our own best editor. Our brains trick us. They show us things that, are in our head but are not yet on the paper. And we always need that objectivity. So you're just echoing, giving credence to what we believe about that. So thank you.
Shonda, I've got a question though. How did that writing publishing journey prepare you for this new role as a writing coach?
Well, one, I didn't expect to be a writing coach, but it prepared me because I went through a lot of trials. I've self-published, and I think I remember even asking you, Eddie, well, I had self-published this, what can I do with it? And you're like, well, you can't do anything with it. You've already got an ISBN attached to it. There's nothing you can do with it. Though I did take that. It was a Bible study I wrote on the book of Hosea, a 12-week Bible study, walking through chapter by chapter through the book of Hosea. And I took that and self-published it, but that was before I worked with Lighthouse Publishing, and I did not know what I was doing. And so I did sell, copies to my church where I taught the Bible study. I sold copies to a local teen challenge where some other ladies took it and taught Bible studies, and to a few others that, maybe I sold 100 copies, but then I did unpublish it because I did have a tentative contract with Iron Stream Media on it. And again, I got editor feedback from, at that time, Ramona was the staff editor there, Ramona Richards, and got feedback from her on it. And she told me what she wanted to see changed before we entered into a contract. But that was also in 2020. And at that time, my mom went on to hospice, and we brought her into my home on hospice, and then she passed away. And then I just never picked that back up again, and I just let that fall. So I still have that content that I could pursue that perhaps through Iron Stream Media, or I don't know. I'm praying about what I want to do with that Bible study.
But what you learned through that experience was you jumped ahead, and you weren't really prepared. And just because you knew how to do it and you could, didn't mean you should have, right? Right.
It was really premature, and I've learned a lot on the way. And so that's what I could share with writers who either want to seek traditional publishing or want to stay the indie author route. I can work with them either way, because I have learned through experience what not to do, and I can save them through teaching some of my experiences how to avoid those same pitfalls.
Yes. Well, and your mission statement for your ministry, Kingdom Living Institute, which this is going to fall underneath, your coaching is going to fall underneath that. Do you want to share your mission statement with our listeners?
Well, I'm still writing all this because really this whole writing coaching opportunity just fell into my lap this past December. This is at the time of this recording, this is January. And so this past December 22. And I was doing a masterclass on fear. And during that masterclass, I shared how fear was hindering me from fulfilling the call of being a writer, a published author, and speaker when the Lord kept calling me to write. And I kept like, no, I don't want to do this because I have to be transparent. I had to be vulnerable. I have to put myself out there. And when you are dealing with a shameful experience, it's, you know, you got a lot of healing to do to be able to put yourself out there. And I didn't know that healing was possible because of where I was stuck at the time, and fear was holding me captive. And so I taught this class on fear, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but in the comments, I was doing a live stream. And when I read the comments later, somebody quoted the very words I said, and those words came back right at me. And I realized that I was still running from God and hiding in fear from what he's called me to do. And that was because people keep coming to me and asking, Shonda, I want to write a book. What do I do? Shonda, what do I do to write a book? You've written a book. How do I even get started? And so because of that, I said, okay, Lord, I know I've been running from you for this. Eddie even told me at one point, he said, Shonda, if you want to start your own business, you can start your own business. I'm like, Eddie, I've already seen the ins and outs of this. I don't know that I want to have a business, but I'm like, all right, so Lord, I surrender to you. I'm just going to send out 5 text messages. I don't know why I picked 5, but 5 people who have contacted me and said, how do I write a book? And so I sent out those 5 text messages. I said, hey, if I start a coaching business in 2023 and I can give you a quick win, would you give me a testimonial, case study, a report, if I can give you a quick win? And 3 or 4 of the 5 took me up on that. And I've already had some coaching sessions with them. And one of them already said, okay, well, how do I sign up for more? I'm like, okay, well, I need to put together a package. All right, here's the package, and already paid me, and I'm already working with her. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that this was going to happen, but wow, 1 out of 5, like, okay, I guess I'm in a writing coaching business. And so I'm really grateful for this opportunity to serve the Lord in this way, to help others get their message out, because we are serving a king. We are kingdom people. We are living on this earth, representatives of a kingdom, and we're to spread that message and get his message out there through our words. And it is so important right now. And there's other people that have messages to get out there. And I know, and I have the skill sets from having the experience with working with Eddie and Lighthouse Publishing in the Carolinas, from working with Iron Stream Media. I have the experience to help them get their message together and get it out there. And I'm ready to do whatever the Lord's called me to do, to start helping them get their messages out there.
Well, I think that's very brave, and I think it's wonderful, because you obviously have so much that you can bring to them, things that you've learned. But it's interesting. So you're writing a specific mission. You're still writing that mission for your writing coach business. But I just want to share your mission for Kingdom Living Institute with our listeners, because I think it's a beautiful mission, Shonda, and it's to equip believers to live out biblical principles, to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth as it is in heaven. And I think through your Bible study, your Hosea study, and your other courses, the Kingdom Living Testament Institute has offered, equipping the saints is an imperative. So I think it's wonderful that that's where you're starting from to then define a specific mission for your writing business, coaching business.
Yes, because so much of it is mindset. What blocked me was the mental blocks that the enemy threw at me with fear, doubt, worry, unbelief, shame, and guilt. All those he threw at me, and they held me captive. And the Lord showed me how to break free and to break those chains and break out of the captivity, to be healed, one, in my heart, and then to be able to speak boldly and confidently in front of an audience, and to share the message that we have, whether it's with a written word or whether the spoken word. And so that's what I'm helping these ladies through. Well, I say ladies because most of the ones that have been drawn to me are women. I did coach one man the other day, last week, but most of them are women. But I'm coaching them through the process of writing. I held a coffee chat. I said, well, I just did this organically. I put it out on Facebook. I said, let's have a coffee chat. If you're ready to write your message and you're struggling, let's turn those struggles into strategies and let's have a chat about it. And so I just put it out for 4 days on Facebook, and I got 14 people registered and 11 actually showed up for a Saturday morning coffee chat. Yeah. And so we discussed where they are struggling in writing, and most of them are dealing with traumatic situations that they're overcoming and coming through. You know, one expressed that she just found out her parents are deceased and just found out that she was adopted, and it was never told all through her life, you know, that she was adopted, and you know, found that out. Another one had both of her parents committed suicide at different times. You know, that is very traumatic. You know, in other situations, another lady had survived in a gas grill exploding in her face and had PTSD from that. And now she's ready to share her story. But how do we process through this to write the story so that we can get those messages that will encourage other people? And so I'm working on coaching them through that. And, you know, the one client I have right now, I'm, you know, working with her through what her traumatic situation is and helping her find her why and who she's writing to. And that those are the very important first steps. Like, why are you writing this book? How has your experience helped you so that you can help these other women that have been through that experience? And then identifying who you're writing to. Yeah.
So, okay, hey, Shonda, can we switch gears just for a second, because we're going to run out of time here in just a few. Can you talk for a minute what success looks like and how you define success now rather than maybe a couple of years ago?
Well, how I define success is staying in the will of God, right where He wants you. You know, and it says in Romans 12 that be transformed by the mind so that you know what God's perfect will is. And it goes back to that staying in His will and knowing what His will is. And I have had an lifelong experience of running from God when He wants me to go one way, and I run from Him. And I'm ready to say, yes, I'm all in and not run anymore. Because I know what that running looks like and what it leads. I walk away limping like Jacob. And I'm ready to say yes when He says do that. So success is staying in His will and doing what He calls you to do, no matter what the cost is.
That book behind you on the shelf, is it a bestseller yet?
It's a work in progress. It will be. No, but I do have, this is what I do have, and I've shared this with you, Eddie, and I'll share this with Diana and the viewers here. I do have over 44,000 copies in print, and that's because a prison ministry, because this is the book that that's behind me, the Appeal to the Courtroom of Heaven, petitions for prisoners and prison families, the book that I wrote to a very niche market. And a prison ministry, the CEO of the prison ministry, he's one of the ones besides you, Eddie, that would tell me, Shonda, write the book. As a matter of fact, he was even more than you. You just email me. This guy his name's Stephen Kennett, would call me at 5 a.m. I'm praying for you, and the Holy Spirit said you're going to write that book. And I'm like, all right. Well, his ministry got a licensing agreement with Iron Stream Publishing to run 44,000 print copies and have them distributed to prisons all across the United States.
That's awesome.
And
Wow.
so, and I'm getting testimonies, because there is a very strong salvation message in chapter 4. And in that, I'm getting testimonies of people receiving Christ in prison. And the families are contacting me. Hey, my loved ones said they got this book, and they're getting the book, and they're contacting me. And so I am just absolutely thrilled about what God's doing through that book, and some of the testimonies that are coming through it.
All because you wrote a book.
Yes, you were obedient, and you conquered that fear and, you know, those things that were holding you back. And I think that's part of the great things about being a writing coach is we help, you know, would-be writers confront those fears and take those steps like you did. And what a wonderful cheerleader you had.
Yes. Yes. Yes,
yeah.
and Eddie Jones and Cindy Sproles, they're some of my biggest ones, and Andrea Merle, my editor. I'm just, you know, want to give a big shout out to them too, and Iron Stream Media too. So
yeah, that to a large degree, Diana, I've talked about this before. That is what a coach does. I mean, they're there to guide you, but a lot of it's just cheerleading. It's just encouraging people to keep doing the daily thing of right each day. Well, this has been great. Thanks for coming on with us, Shonda. This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
Diana, you want to close it with any parting comments? I mean, we've been doing this a while.
What was that?
I said, just close with any parting comments about what a writing coach does and the need for a writing coach, and why somebody should get in contact with Shonda.
Yes, we're going to share Shonda's contact information in the comment section on Facebook and in the description box on our YouTube channel. And isn't it just a privilege to walk alongside people to follow their calling, Shonda? I mean, I think that's one of the most exciting things is we get to clear the path, keep people from stumbling and making the same mistakes we might have made or we saw other people make. And we can help accelerate their journey, but help them to do it with excellence. And I know that's our heart here at Reality Coaching for Writers. And we have a tagline, Shonda, that no fluff, just the real stuff.
Oh, I love it.
And it's because we just realized that telling somebody what they want to hear never helps anybody move forward. They need to have a realistic view of what a publishing journey consists of. And there's some steps that you've got to take. You can't skip them. You can't, like you learned in self-publishing, you kind of skipped a couple steps just because you could. And now you've taken that down because you know that you could do it better. And that's exactly what we like to help writers do. Eddie?
Well, the only thing I would add to that is, Shonda, thank you so much for not running away again. This is great for being obedient. And again, I'll say this to you before I'll say it again. LPC would never have published the number of books that we published and made as many dreams come true, both for agents and authors, without your help. So thank you very much for being obedient when the time finally came. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm so glad to be a part of what LPC represented at the time that it existed, and to be a part of so many authors' lives and the agents and everything. I am so grateful for the connections, because I think the friendships are for everlasting, and I'm so grateful for those.
Amen. All right, listen, thank you very much. We'll see you next week, Diana. Have a great one.
Okay, everybody, have a great week. Thank you again, Shonda.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.